Hello, Cesar. Nice
Hi,
to meet you.
Gracia. Nice to meet you too. How are you? How are you doing?
Good, good. And you?
So far, so good. Yes.
All right. So
Well,
we were asked to observe our sessions,
right.
and we need to answer some questions. Can you start with the first question, please?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So the first question goes like this. What were the strengths that I observed in this case, based in your class, and how did you come to that conclusion? Well, I think, one of the main parts that I saw, for example, in your class is that like the way you engage, everyone, almost everyone there, in participating. And also how you use over there, technology, right? Technology and the good thing is that also you encourage them, to participate, just to share and so on. And I actually not very sure if the students did, that they were writing over there, they were typing. That is a very good practice. Well, I normally do it, and if I have to do it, I just use it. For example, in that case, the message, the chat more or less. So I really love it because I think like you like to use you're knowledgeable about using, for example, this kind of technological skills as well, which make it more attractive as well. That's what I saw, and I believe that in conclusion that the class went well. I really love it, especially when the last part, in which where students were guessing, for example, the different parts of the house and so on. I think that was very amusing, and very appealing for them.
Thank
Yes,
you very much. Well,
thank
in
you.
my case, the strengths that I observed was how you started the lesson with like you stay a couple of minutes in the first part, brainstorming ideas, asking an open question to students. So more or less they know what the lesson is going to be about, what are they going to talk about. And I think that's a part that I sometimes forget because of the time. Usually I forget that part. And in the session that I observed, you took time to make sure that everyone participated in the open question. Everybody was giving their own ideas, their own examples, and I think that was pretty good. And also the tone of voice that you use, right, is very soothing. I think it's very nice. You engage with students easily. I think also you greet them and talked about Mother's Day. You were asking them how they spend Mother's Day, something like that. I heard in the
Yep,
session.
yep, yep.
So I think these questions, these opinions, these things that you say also help to create, right, a connection with students, a special connection, let's say.
Yeah, the same,
Let
the same.
Sometimes I skip. I miss that part. Sometimes I move forward super easily from the first part to the next one. But I think it's very important to do what you do, which is take time and make sure that everyone knows what's coming ahead, right? Let's move
Right.
forward to the next question.
Okay, thank you. So, well, the next question is, what questions came to your mind based on what you observed? Yeah, the first question that maybe, comes to my mind is, for example, is there a way that you usually, for example, apply for, encouraging students to participate eagerly?
A special way.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's just,
Um,
I mean, like, I mean, how do you make them, participate eagerly? I mean, without having the pressure, to participate. And, since the very beginning, we have to create, a good rapport. So then just can, start participating on their own. So what
I think
kind of,
it's a good idea to make them feel comfortable.
right?
Um, and sometimes I think it's better to present yourself as someone that is not as strict as you should sometimes, because if you
Yeah.
are only focusing on mistakes or being very precise with things, they feel scared. Sometimes they feel ashamed probably of their production, their oral production, and I think that also stops participation, right? So sometimes the students, because of how the teacher is going to react or something, they say, okay, I'm not going to say anything. So I think creating that openness at the beginning, like participate, you know, we are here to learn. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake. I'm gonna correct it, and you are gonna learn something new. And I think it's better to, you know, state that at the beginning of the program, at the beginning of the class, because I mentioned that at the very beginning in induction section, in induction week,
Right.
I mentioned that. Feel free to participate, ask questions, as many questions as you ask, because it's very important that when we finish the lesson, you don't go, you know, with questions in your mind, right? The idea. And if you don't know how to mention that in English, you can stay a couple of minutes later. So I think that's also, you know, creates, okay, the teacher is open to answer my doubts, right? To answer my questions and everything. So I think that's a good way to make them eager to participate. So far, it works. So far, yes.
Sure it does. Sure it does. And something that drew my attention was like you say even longer, than 55 minutes. That is, the usual. Yeah. All right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a very good, that's something very good, especially for you because, normally most teachers would just, look at the clock and it's just, 15 minutes and then okay, thank you very much. See you next
Goodbye.
time.
Yes.
All right. Yeah,
Yes, that is
definitely.
true. Well,
Good,
in
good
my
job.
case, thank you very much. In my case, the questions that came to my mind was how you come up with these questions. It was a very good question at the beginning. How you come up with these questions in order to enter the topic. Because I lack that. I don't have that. I don't think I am, you know, very creative with that part. So
Yeah.
how do you come up with that?
Well, just before I start, my lesson, I usually like to, take a look at what I'm going to, explain and I'm going to deliver to the students. And I just try to just make it, like a kind of breaking the ice, breaking the ice activity, and so I think I've been testing, students since the very beginning. I'm not talking about, this lesson, but since we started, for example, the new cycle, understanding how they feel and so on, and what they really like it, Sometimes, for example, we, especially, for vocabulary, we play with, um, sometimes, Kahoot,
Mhm.
sometimes we do it, another, things like technological, I mean, like games, and so, well, I like to, see other ways, for example. I mean, I'm not a person or I'm not a teacher who like to, follow what is there, So I try to just come up with some other questions or maybe activities. I'm the one, for example, who probably most of the time I couldn't finish all the slides, so I moved, even when sometimes, the topic is a little bit irrelevant, maybe that happened to you, you saw like, what's this, or sometimes it's some kind of repetitive,
Right.
so, and you need to, there is like one way to just start creating something new and so on, so get away from the common, from the usual. So that's what I like, that's what I like. And I think students find it, kind of appealing, kind of like, why,
Yes.
okay, in this
Right.
case, I'm going to have the chance to participate, as much as possible. So yeah.
Right. So you don't stick to the material, but you give like the extra, right?
No,
The extra.
I don't really stick to my guns. Yeah, I don't stick to my guns. I always like to,
Expand.
try to come up with
Yes.
something else. I'm not saying that I'm breaking the rules, but I'm saying that I
Right.
think it's just to,
As long as it helps reach the goal, I think
it is,
it's
it
good.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Otherwise, I wouldn't be using, for example, the slides, that it's
Correct.
provided by the university. Yeah, of course. Yes.
All right. Perfect. Thank you very much. Can you move forward to the next question?
All right. So yeah, we're gonna go now. Question number 3. In what areas could you peer improve? Okay. Well, I just don't know. Maybe you correct me if it is wrong, but have the students, for example, have the students use the chat then, for example? Because I was like
In
able to
this
in
in this
this
session,
like
no.
not really, but you usually do it. I mean, for other.
I usually do the problem with that, because I know that we can do that too, is that when I say, because it happened before, when I say, okay, use the chat, when I say that, they stop participating early and they prefer to use the chat. Can I use the chat? And that's what they say, right? And they start writing. And for me, that's not, I mean, there's not a good balance there, right? because as long
Yeah.
as they keep talking oral, I prefer the oral part instead of the chat. But I know that sometimes, for example, to kill time, let's say, for example, in the first part to brainstorm ideas or to refresh vocabulary, I think it's a good idea to put the chat. Okay, give me some examples for furniture, for example, bed, table, right? So I think in that case, yes.
Yeah, it works.
And
Yeah.
also mention that, right? Only for this. But if elaborate answers, I don't think that's a good idea. I prefer them to activate their microphones and actually elaborate what their
Yeah.
opinions or something. Hmm?
I couldn't agree with you more, at the very beginning, of course, I do that, I like try to brainstorming, and if we're talking about, for example, in this case, furniture, so I like the students, to try to come up with the words that maybe they remember or they have studied, before, and so yeah, I mean, I was actually criticized, one time for not using this, students like they were not exposed to start writing, and so,
Correct.
but that's why I ask you if you were using, for example, some of the chat, because well, it's understood that the students they have to master the four skills, right?
Correct.
But just in one word, I mean, it's not gonna happen like every class that you have to do it, So in a way that maybe probably you can do it, like kind of balance using it. I use, for example, sometimes at the end, what it's called the Padlet, so students
Mhm.
can and so on. Yeah. Mhm.
Exactly.
What
All
about
right.
you?
In my case,
Yeah.
I wouldn't know what to say, honestly. Only the part that I mentioned at the before the meeting. Um, but once again, if you say that the objective is to reach the goal, the communicative objective, right? I think that
Yeah.
that wouldn't be an area to improve. But I think timing probably. I don't know if I'm wrong. Timing, I think based on what I observe, right? Based on what I observe. But once again, it wasn't like a waste of time. I think you manage the, how can I say this? The production. You prioritize the product or production of students. So it wasn't like, I mean, I couldn't even sense that the timing was going through until the end, right? Why? Because I was concentrated on how you engage students to participation, calling them for participating, and they were also activating the microphones. So I didn't realize the timing until the end. Okay, so he took this time for this part until the very end because I was listening to how you were asking the questions, how you were transitioning from one part to the other, right?
Sure.
With the open question at the beginning. So I will say that's the only thing.
Well, let me tell you, I usually give the students an average of, 8 to 10 minutes, more or less,
Mm-hmm.
but however, when I move to one of the breakout rooms, so there will be, one student connected, and then, all of a sudden, the students, actually leave the room. So
Correct.
the one who is in the breakout room, so sometimes I have to interact with her or with him, depends who is the student. So sometimes,
Mhm.
that really makes me, probably, stay a little bit longer, in these breakout rooms. So
Correct.
I think in the recording we are able only to see just the main room, but you don't see the other breakout rooms, right? Where
Exactly.
probably you realize that, if the students are doing well or not, something like that. But yeah, it happens, So I always like to say that technology, is an opportunity, but also is a nightmare. Yes. Okay,
Thank you
cool.
very much. Yes.
My pleasure. And so it says over here, the other question number 4, right? What did
Yes,
you
correct.
learn
The
from
next question.
what did you learn from the observation? Well, uh, I think it's like there was a balance, as I always like to, highlight the objective and also the topic that we normally start, our class, and also how you engage the students as well. I also like how you write it, how the way you are typing, for example, in the slide. It's something that I cannot do, I wish I could do the same, but sometimes I cannot do it, and I just don't know why, but yeah, I think it's well, in a nutshell, I can say that I just learned, two important things. First, the way you engage the students, and also how you just make them interact. Giving them, the right time to do it, and also making sure that all of them participate. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, in my case, what I learned from the observation was how to create and come up with these questions that were really interesting to see also how students connected with the question. One more time, that is something that I know that I lack, because teachers know what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, right? And I know that that is one of my weak points, which is not be creative with these questions that connect, that we need. Basically, every session we need that, because that's something that they really point out. And in every session we need to activate prior knowledge, right? Yes.
Definitely.
Yes. So
Definitely.
I think that is something that I learned from this session particularly. Uh, based on the observation, what constructive suggestions could you make to improve the teaching practice? Well, I already mentioned that. I think
Honestly,
yes,
I think we already have the answer. We have already discussed the answer, to this question, since the
correct.
very beginning of this. Um, I guess that sometimes, I mean, it's just my suggestions. I don't do it, especially, I don't do it with UPC, or in this case UPM, but in other universities we do it because it's actually, one of the it's more than a suggestion. I always like to, send the students some kind of a survey and telling them what they like it. For example, some of them may say like, I would like to start with the song, others, with a Kahoot game or something like that. So I wish that we could have that, with our students from UPM, something that should be not only for the ones that consider, but for everyone, and then we will be able to see what the students really like it. So that's I think I mean, generally speaking, that we probably can do it in order to find out what we really need to do, in our classroom, so that we can have, a really effective, lesson, and meaningful as well.
Exactly. Well, in my case, I would like to add that based on what I observe, because it's based on the observation,
Yeah,
something to improve the teaching practice in general is what I observe, right? Which is activating students' prior knowledge with these questions,
right.
connecting with the students, in a good way in order for active participation during the session. And yes, actually make sure that they are able to produce the language, right? And I think that is something that I observe very, very clearly in your video, in your session. So that will be it from my place. It says that it was really nice to observe your lesson and learn something new
That that really
today.
that really makes two of us. That really makes two of us. It was a pleasure actually to first meet you, and then exchange information, and ideas about our lessons as well. Yes. So thank you
Thank
so
you very
much.
much. It was nice to meet you. We finished the
Thank
meeting
you.
here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.